Hey everybody, welcome back. We're on quite the run here in the Binding of Isaac Afterbirth Plus, 21 wins in a row. I'm primed for like a keeper run. Go ahead. I'm not guaranteeing a win. I'm just saying I'm in the right mindset for it. Coward. I called it. 1996. This is I'm trying to think. If you were born in 1996, you're like 24, 25 years old right now. You're probably freaking out. What? That's my birth year. Crazy. It's crazy for me to think about too. You were born in 1996. Now you're going through a quarter-life crisis. For me, and you know, again, it doesn't have to be a bit about, you know, oh, people get older. But I still, like, I'm essentially the same age as people born in 1990. Like, even my wife was born in 1992, right? But as a 1988 baby, I have definitely had the thought before in my life that was like, yo, imagine being born in the 90s. Crazy. Can you believe there's people who just, like, got born in the 90s? That's wild, man. And then, of course, you know, now, people who were born in the year 2000 can, like, legally drink in the United States this year? That's pretty absurd. You know, it just goes to show you, time keeps on marching on. I think the next weird milestone for me, like, obviously, like, we have our own kid. But I think, and as, you know, she ages, I'm sure that I'm going to feel like, you know, every year that goes by, I'm going to feel like 5 years older. But, I think the next weird, like, cerebral milestone is when kids who were born the year I graduated from college go to college. I graduated from college in the halcyon days of 2010. It was a long time ago, and the world was a different place. The world was a different place, you know. We were still, you had, you know, classmates who didn't necessarily want to get their master's degree, but they were like, you know what, the effects of the recession are still on. Maybe I'll just ride out this weird economic downturn by going to school a little bit more, and then it'll pay for itself. Anyway, long story short, that's how things could have gone. Let me out of here. But yeah, it was 2010. It was a long time ago now. And kids who were born in 2010 are now, like, 11 years old. We probably are in the... Like, there's probably, like, one kid born in 2010 who's in college right now. But I'm talking about the critical mass. I'm not talking about those kids who, like, you know, they invent, like, a 3D printer out of Lego when they're 6 years old and, you know, win the Nobel Peace Prize. Or I'm not talking about Doogie Howser. I'm talking about, like, you know, Tim the student who has, like, a... You know, a 3.6 GPA, which is not an insult. It's, you know, it's a perfectly great GPA. You know what's, and I don't know if this is the same, because, like, I feel like I'm now so distant from it, I can no longer really talk about, you know, like, what it is like to get into, you know, like, university in Canada. But, when I went to school, it was fairly, like, competitive. There was this thing coming up called the double cohort, which is like, you know, in Ontario at least, I don't know if it was in all of Canada, but high school didn't used to just go to 12th grade. There used to be a grade 13. I know it sounds like a funny joke about Canada, like, oh, you know, in Canada, they go to grade 13. Pomp it.
Credit card.
Deep pockets. Crooked penny. We get everything for free? We could try to double our deal with the devil if we don't love it. That seems fantastic. But yeah, there used to be a 13th grade, and then they decided that it, you know, was imprudent to keep it. I'm of two minds about that, by the way. I was in 9th grade when they discontinued the 13th grade, so, you know, when you're that age, you're like, sick, I get out of school, or, like, you know, go to college faster, you know? But as I've gotten older, I've realized, you know... Especially, and I can speak about this, you know, from a late birthday mindset, but, you know, I don't think any person, well, that's not true. Some people, they just, you know, from the age of 11 onwards, they're like, I want to be a computer programmer. And then, you know, They grow up and they turn into John Carmack. But the average person doesn't really know what they want to do. At like 17, 18 years old, they don't know who they are even, for the most part. I'm gonna grab these, and then yeah, I figured if that goes wrong, so be it. Let me caffeinate before we get into the rest of this bit. They don't even know like who they are really, right? And then, like I've told this story before, but essentially, how did I decide to get a degree in biology? Well, we all had appointments. You know, in 12th grade with our guidance counselor, and then he was just basically, I'm not blaming the guidance counselor necessarily, but, you know, he was basically like, what school subject do you like? And I was like, biology? And he's like, well, you could apply to university for biology. And I was like, all right, I guess that's my life now. You know, and that's fine, but I don't necessarily think it's the most apt way to determine, you know, what you should do with the rest of your life is like what school subject do you have the most aptitude for? Because honestly, like a life in, you know, especially in the sciences, you know, well, no, that's not fair to say necessarily, but long story short, you know, just because you're good at like memorizing stuff in biology class, that doesn't necessarily mean you're cut out for the duties of the average, you know, professional biologist, which are largely like, you know, lab driven unless you get into academia. But anyway, you know, I think is, you know, what do you value in life, you know? Do you value being fulfilled in your work, or do you value, you know, are you content being like, oh, I'm going to give up like 40 hours a week to, you know, just cynically take the highest salary I possibly can and then, you know, live like a king on the weekends or whatever? Like, I think these are the kind of questions that are actually a little bit more relevant, but nobody will tell you that. Let me grab this, and why not? You know, didn't work out, life goes on. We took a gamble. Anytime a gamble fails from this point on in Isaac, I'm just going to say we did it to stick it to the hedge funds. And then instead of just being a degenerate gambler, you know, it appears that we have some principles. But yeah, you know, so I think like that was really like what I think is the complicated thing for me is I really don't think, at least with my high school experience, I really don't think there was a need for a 13th grade. There almost wasn't even really like a need for a 12th grade. Like most of the stuff in my first year of university was just a rehash of like 12th grade science and math to get everybody back up to speed. But certainly a 13th grade is kind of like a little too much. But at the same time, I feel like, you know, what's the purpose of school? Is it to, you know, drill in the most amount of information as quickly as possible? Or is it to, you know, make sure you're not going out into a system where you're essentially living on your own when you're, you know, 16 years old, which is... People got up to enough trouble at 17, 18, 19. I think the 16 is maybe a little bit too young to be, you know, living in the dorms. Anyway, like, who's gonna drive you on your beer runs if nobody's got their full license? Anyway. But yeah, like, it was competitive to get into university when I was in high school. I know because you maybe have a mental image of now as being like the, you know, it's never been more competitive than this. And, you know, like, my high school days now are like almost as far away for you as like Dazed and Confused was for me, which is kind of crazy to think about. You know, I know that you see everything from my high school days with like an Instagram filter over top of it. Like, oh, did they even have color photography back then? They did. It was used sparingly because it was so expensive and you had to sit still for 3 hours to get your portrait taken, but they did have it. But it used one of those big old-timey flash bulbs every time you got your photo taken, and it smoked up the whole school. Anyway. But I always thought it was crazy, like, school systems are similar between Canada and the United States, but still different enough to be bizarre on whatever side of the coin you're on. Like, do you know, at least when I was in high school in Ontario, your marks, i.e. your grades, your GPA, let's say, in 9th and 10th grade, almost didn't matter at all if you were only applying to Canadian universities. You know, the vast majority of your ability to get in, and we're talking about for like a generalized program, you know, if you're going to school for math or physics or engineering, you know, If you have to do something that there's like 10 spots worldwide for or something like that, this is a tough one. You might find we could have doubled it. That would have been, but I didn't feel like sticking it to the hedge funds there. It would have been an interesting double though, that's for sure. But yeah, basically like your 11th grade marks mattered a lot, and then your first semester marks, which is what we call grades sometimes in Canada. Your first semester, that was a terrible deal. Grades mattered. First semester of 12th grade marks mattered quite a lot, I think. And then everything else kind of just came out in the wash, you know. Once you got into school, it takes a lot for them to rescind your offer. I didn't mean to purchase that, by the way. I'm just looking for a battery charge, really, to get one last slurp of the dopamine. I remember, so I have a very academically minded friend from the United States. Hey. And I remember him saying, like, literally, even your 9th grade GPA matters when you're applying to, like, prestigious American schools. That seems crazy to me, man. I mean, on the one hand, you know, if it's that competitive, why shouldn't somebody who's demonstrated, you know, academic acumen and dedication for all 4 years of high school have an advantage over, you know, somebody who maybe only got it together in like 11th grade or 12th grade? I suppose there's a certain sense of fairness there. At the same time, I can't imagine, because like I was a really good student in 11th grade, really from 10th grade to 12th grade. I was a really good student, you know. I did my homework, I handed things in on time. When I got really serious, I even, you know, kept the extra marks from not accidentally forgetting to put a rubric attached to things, or, oh, you didn't put a title page on this, you know, you lose 2%, etc., right? I think we will get this, and then just keep it moving. But I can't imagine, like, you know, in 9th grade, I was kind of a bad student, and it wasn't because I was, like, you know, I'm trying to think of the way to phrase it. It wasn't because I was stupid or anything like that. It was just because, you know, it's a big time in a kid's life, the transition from elementary school to high school, right? Like, not only is it a complete social shakeup, like you're meeting. It's almost like when they met the other side of the island on Lost, right? Like you've been in this. At least in my case, I went to the same elementary school from junior kindergarten. So, like, literally I was 3 until 8th grade. So I was, like, 13. It's crazy. I knew the same kids, like, for 98% of my life. And then you meet kids from, like, the other high school or the other elementary schools that all come into the same feeder high school. And you don't know the social hierarchy. You're meeting people and you're like, I don't know if you're... if you have, you know, social clout, or if you're like, are you violent, or do people like you? Do they hate you? I don't know. Do you stink? Does your mom send you with like a rotisserie chicken from Costco for lunch, or is she giving you like a buttered salami sandwich? Like, it's all brand new, right? And then on top of figuring that out, you know, usually you have a little bit more freedom or responsibility. Like, you know, 8th grade, I was in the same classroom all day. You know, you come to the classroom at 8:15 and you leave at 3. 9th grade, you're moving along. You don't have the same kids in every single class. Like, it's a period, and on top of that, like I don't want to say you're entering adulthood, because it's not really the case, but like, you know, your priorities change. You know, when you're entering high school, it's not just about, like, you know, you're not just a little kid who's going to school anymore. You're like, you know, you're starting to be more concerned about, you know, maybe like, social stuff, and, you know, you can get seduced by the idea of being cool, right? So yeah, I mean, in 9th grade, I was just like kind of dumb and unfocused and a little lazy, which I think you can excuse because of the fact that I was, you know, 13 years old. But can't imagine then being like, you know, oh, well, you know, I was gonna go to Harvard, but in 9th grade, I only got an 82 in math class. Like, I can't get into Harvard because 4 years ago I got an 82 in math class. Now that I have 1B on my GPA, my GPA isn't like 4.00000, it's 3.9986 or something like that, and they won't even look at me. It's kind of crazy, man. Then again, like, I guess, you know, just don't go to Harvard, forehead, I suppose. I don't know, like, have this discussion now and then. You shouldn't really take academic advice from me, but here, I'll tell you, here's how I see it. At least in Canada, okay? So, you know, if you went to a good school in Canada, you might make that part of your identity, right? You might be like, oh, I went to McGill, I went to U of T, I went to UBC, etc., etc. All good schools. I would be over the moon if, you know, if my daughter decides to go on the scholastic path, if she decides to go to the University of British Columbia and is also fortunate enough to get in, is close to home, at least for now. It's a beautiful campus. It's a wonderful school, you know? But I'm also going to hit you with something. I really feel that, like, for 90% of academic programs, it doesn't matter that much what undergrad you went to. Maybe I'm a fool. Again, like, I'm being very open about the fact that I'm essentially coming from a position of ignorance here. Man, it just, like, does not work, huh? Tempted to take the jar of flies, but you know what? Let's keep it moving. You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. I don't want it. I don't want it. I refuse. It's broken, man. The item's broken. Just sticking it to the hedge funds. I'm just trying to stick it to the hedge funds here, but all these dang paper hands keep selling. But yeah, I'm kind of the opinion that it doesn't matter, like, what undergraduate university you go to. Like, and if you went to, like, Yale or Harvard or something like that, and this comes as, like, a shock to you, then I apologize. But, like, if you're like, I got a, you know, math, I got a bachelor's of science in math from Yale, I would be like, okay, cool. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a great school, it's very hard to get in. But I'm pretty sure that we, you know, bachelor's of science from biology, or a bachelor's of science in biology from Yale, and a bachelor's of science in biology from Queens, which is the school I went to. Which, by the way, used to be a very prestigious school in Canada, but has recently undergone a bit of a downturn, let's say, due to gaining a reputation as a party school and increasingly strained town-gown relations. But anyway, hey Thomas, hey buddy, do you wanna escape from my office? Running to the dry food is a new ambition of Tomo. Okay, sorry. But yeah, I mean, I might be wrong. I don't know. Maybe your 4-year degree from Yale matters, like, I don't know, $15,000 a year more to employers. But I'm pretty sure, like, you know, in today's modern era, a generalized, you know, 4-year degree from Harvard and a 4-year degree from almost any other accredited, you know, university essentially qualifies you for the same thing, which is to get a master's degree in the same field. Or become a YouTuber, one of the two, right? So now, where you get like your next degrees, if you choose to go that way, I do think it might matter a lot more. But yeah, let's just say, like, you know, and to some extent, you know, because people are very, especially I think parents, it's hard not to get in the rat race of, like, well, you know, my kid's gonna get into, like, Kate and I have been having this discussion, and I hesitate to even bring it up because I think most people are gonna be on my side, which is kind of just unfair, you know. You know, it's a discussion we're having at home. I don't bring it up to get, like, support on my side, rather just to, you know, be illustrative, I guess. But, and plus it's, you know, 18 years away and a problem that we may not even have, depending on what our kid chooses to do, which is up to her, quite frankly. But, you know, we've had the thought experiment brewing, like, what if she gets into and wants to go to, like, an expensive American school, for undergrad, and I've kind of been of the opinion, I'm like, you know, if she like wanted to go to Harvard and got in, I would be like, don't go. Just go to like, you don't even have to necessarily go to a Canadian school, but like, you know, why not go to like if you can get into Harvard, you can get into a world-class school, you know, probably just about anywhere in the world. And then you'll save like a ton of money. Really, you'll save us a ton of money on your undergraduate education. Now, if she got her undergrad degree at UBC and then she was like, I got into like, you know, Harvard Medical School or something like that, I'd be like, all right, let's move into a 200 square foot storage locker and, you know, we'll handle the tuition there, I suppose. Do it honestly, what do you want me to do? I'm trying to stick it to Melvin here. Anyway, but we're, you know, let's be honest, like, I have no doubt of my my daughter's intellectual acumen. I mean, she's making all sorts of gestures and stuff already. She accidentally gives me the middle finger like 6 times a day. But I'm just kind of, you know, in all likelihood, we're not going to have to worry about that problem. Let's put it that way. Because she'll get a full scholarship, so we won't even have to think about it. We'll be like, yeah, go ahead. Oh, no, but careful, Boston's cold. I'm not buying you a Canada Goose jacket. Anyway. But yeah, it's probably like, I have to imagine it's more competitive now, right? But it was like the same thing, right? Like, I've been, I'm guilty of using this rhetoric, right? But I feel like it is fair to say things are always getting more competitive. And I'm not absent that, by the way. Like, you might think, like, oh, it was so easy when you were, you know, in high school. Sure, yeah, but, like, I'm still on YouTube, and every day it gets even harder on YouTube to stay competitive, you know? You're dealing with... Back in 2012, it was just me and, like, you know, 6 other nerds with $20 Logitech desktop microphones. Now we're fighting off like NBC, man. It's a constant struggle to stay relevant for sure. But I just feel like, you know, it's a constant growth in the level of competition, just because, you know, like, population keeps going up, you know, and especially, you know, internationally, you know, as more and more countries in the world, you know, like in Canada in particular, like, I mean, this is like way above my intellectual weight class, but, you know, our economy, you know, we don't have like amazing, we don't have many like amazing, huge tech companies, or, you know, like our economy hinges on like a few things, you know. One of them is natural resources, water, you know, base metals and timber and stuff like that. You know, I suppose oil and gas. And then the other one is like kind of skilled labor. You know, we've got a population of people that tend to be relatively educated, and we've got some world-class universities, and, you know, especially as more and more of the developing world, you know, wants to come to school here, I think it's harder and harder to get in. Which I'm, you know my opinion on iron sharpens iron. But I feel for the younger generation to some extent there. I felt like at the time I had a lot of competition, but now I imagine it feels even harder. But before you feel too sympathetic, just remember it'll be even harder in 15 years. And the generation that's 15 years younger than you will start saying stuff like, oh yeah, well, you could get into university in Canada and still get 6 hours of sleep a night back when you went to high school. The same way now I pay it forward like 15 years up the chain. And I'm like, oh, stop complaining. You could buy a house for a roll of quarters when you could have a minimum wage job at a diner and buy 6 houses when you were entering the property market. You know, it just get ready, because right now you're like, it's the circle of life, you know. You're mad at me because it was easier for me when I was in college or high school or whatever. And then when people get mad at you, you're gonna be like, wait a minute, but it was hard for me, and it was hard for me, and you're making fun of me. So you know, I'm just saying. I think for now, at least, like, it's never gonna get easier, right? Or at least it doesn't seem like that's the way the trend's gonna move. I don't know, I just can't imagine seeing, like, a news report that's like, it's easier than ever to get into college. People just decided to stop going. That being said, you know, I've talked about it before. I mean, this is, I don't mean for this to be a heavy episode. I don't really see it that way. Give me a bomb, please. Thank you. This is what happens when you get a Zazel instead of the Keeper. You know, you can talk openly, right? You can talk frankly. But I really feel like in some ways, there is a curse to being book smart. Or at least this is like the education philosophy when I was in school. And I've said it many times, I don't necessarily think being book smart means you're like naturally gifted or anything like that. I really look to it as like my parents read to me a lot when I was a kid. And I think because, you know, you kind of need to be the stronger you are as a reader, the easier every basic school subject comes to you when you first go to school, and then, you know, from there you're like, oh, I do well in school, so I got self-esteem tied up in that, so I'm gonna work harder at it, and like you know, you keep filling up that bucket over and over. I'm sure that's something people can relate to. Hear me out here. I'm gonna take these two and see where we stand, and then I'm gonna hit this. That's AWAS. I don't think I'm necessarily gonna try to fight Mega Satan straight away. And I actually may not fight Mega Satan at all, and you can be mad, but like this run, honestly, especially since Libra, is kind of like a garbage pickup. But the flip side of that is that, we have money equals power, so we really do have like an all stats engine, which is pretty cool. But Libra is more fun than just fighting Mega Satan, I think, so I'm willing to work with it here. Oh my god, I can't believe we still killed you. Not last, but at least when I went to school, it was like, to be honest with you, the idea of like, you know, not going to college was very much looked down upon, and I, you know, was not part of that culture. I was just, you know, 8. So from the age of 8, they'll, people will say like really messed up things to like a smart kid. You know, if a smart kid gets bullied, they're like, "Oh, don't sweat it. The person that bullied you is gonna work for you someday." And you're like, "This is just like, Mom. It's kind of weird." As a kid, you're like, "Yeah, sick," and it feeds into like a weird superiority, like power complex. As an adult, you're like, "Oh, because you were like, you know, rude to somebody else when you were 5 years old, like all of a sudden now I've got to be like a serf to your kingdom." Like, I don't know, it's maybe not everybody feels the same way about that, but yeah, like it was never even like entertained that I would and I wasn't some kind of like turbo genius. I was just like, I did pretty well in school, but even then it was never even like entertained that like, oh, don't even worry about, like, dude, come on. You don't have to go to woodshop. Woodshop is for the people that don't do well in chemistry, you know? Like, it's like a very weird superiority complex. And I think that, to some extent, the people in the trades are kind of laughing right now, right? Like, you know, there's a lot that is appealing about working in the trades, I think. Especially, you know, as you get more and more involved with it, you know, you can kind of, like, own your own business. You can scale it up. You can have somewhat flexible hours. I'm not saying it's an easy job, but, you know. Meanwhile, like, there's so many people out there that, you know, are like me, and were told that they were, you know, so intelligent that you went to school, and then you realize, like, wait a minute, now there's, like, you know, the huge surplus of lawyers out there, and it's, you know, it's hard to get, like, gainful employment as a lawyer now. Like, it's not that I've been to law school, I'm just saying, right? Like, things change. Yeah, we're due for, like, a bit of a seismic shift in education philosophy in North America. That's just my take on things. But, again, I'm also not, like, an educator. I worked as a teacher for a year. That it gives me essentially... And it was not even really, like, it was a glorified daycare provider. Not that there's anything wrong with that either, but... You know, I'm just saying it gives me more, like, legitimacy to comment on how to manage a classroom full of, like, 30 kids that aren't listening to you than it does to talk about, like, how to, you know, educate them for the betterment of society. Anyway, that's my thoughts on things. I have a great respect for knowledge, don't get me wrong. I love school, but I do think that, you know, I think it's always kind of like, at least public school is kind of, it's always like a lagging indicator, right? You're always adapting to things that have passed, and then trying to, like, you know, I don't know, maybe this is wrong. Now I'm just like, I'm off in my own world here, but I do sometimes feel that. Like, when I look back, I'm like, my school did not prepare me to be an adult in 2020, which is fine, you know, I figured it out mostly over time, but I really think it prepared me for how to be an adult in, like, 1995. The best example I can give, and of course it wouldn't be an Azazel run if we didn't get close to death by the end of it, the best example I can give is that, like, in 9th grade in 2002, our computer teacher was about 75 years old, and they had him teaching computer class because he used to teach typing, like with a typewriter, and literally, like, our class was like, here's how you type and save a document in Microsoft Word, like something that everybody in the class had been doing since they were, I don't know, in 6th grade maybe, minimum, although we used to use WordPerfect back then for Canadian pride, but it's just crazy, you know? And then you're like, I wasn't even in high school that long ago. You know, I graduated in 2006, which admittedly is going to seem like a long time ago, but, like, computers were... It's not like Microsoft didn't exist, you know? Bill Gates already was worth, like, you know, at least, like, a high single-digit billions at that point. Computers were not, like, necessarily on the very, very cutting edge. I'm not asking them to hire, like, you know, Elon Musk to teach computing class. I'm just saying, like, you know, we were, like, way behind the curve on stuff like that. That's why I say, like, I feel like my school didn't really prepare me for life in 2021. It prepared me. I mean, how are you going to predict the future? Like, I'm not super mad about it, but it really prepared me for, like, what the world looked like when the textbooks were made, which was, like, 1976. This is a little spooky, man. Like, I'm starting to think I shouldn't have done this Libra Gambit, but I had to stick it to Melvin. Anyway, I figured it out. More or less. I should have gone back for HP, huh? Yeah, that would have been wise. And this, oh my god. This guy thought he was ready for a keeper run. Can you believe this? He thought he was ready for a keeper run. Can't even win an Azazel run. No! I was so sure I was gonna die. I'm also, like, quite perturbed about just the endless bombs being spawned. Because the bombs do run the risk of ruining my life if they touch me, but I think we killed... Oh, that could have done it. We finally killed the enemy responsible for them. Okay, so I'm gonna... I'm just gonna walk it back real quick. Just gonna walk it back real quick, and we'll probably grab some of this HP. We're doing fine, we're doing fine. This is why you shouldn't... This is why I shouldn't speak. Dude, Azazel? Here's my hot take. Azazel, low-key, one of the toughest characters in this game. I don't know what it is, man. I think I get lulled into a false sense of security. Libra was also a horrible take. We never should have touched Libra. That's like a given, but it was fun, okay? I mean, I have many regrets on this run. Even though it looks now like we'll probably come out of it just fine. We also never should have gotten rid of our orbital, which with a certain amount of HP just guarantees you a victory regardless. Beautiful. Okay. Just coast this one into the finish, right? Like, there's no reason to get super greedy here. Should probably lean on Trinity Shield a little bit more, you know, as long as we got the shield in front of us, it's very difficult for any enemy to really hit us, as long as we don't get hit by the curved shots. We do have the soul, we push bullets away, like, gotta bring that one up to my therapist. So anyway, what's the takeaway from this message? If you went to Harvard, frick you! You think you're better than me? Well, you know, you probably were a better student, at least in high school. A better person? I don't know. There's always a chance. Took a little too much dumb damage there. Because you know what? It's the confidence cycle. It's the fear-greed index. It's ticker symbol VIX. Help. We got a little... When we were scared, we played very well. When we got overconfident, because we played so well when we were scared, started to take some dumb damage. Now we're scared, and our patient gameplay is potentially paying off again. Okay. So it honestly, like, we made it. Whether or not we should have, I leave that up to the peanut gallery. That's 22 wins in a row. For now, thanks for watching. Daniel Sedin. He's number 22. 11 to 4 p.m. Pacific time. I'm live. Twitch.tv/Northernlion every day but Saturday. Come watch. Follow and you can be notified of when I go live. Apart from that, I'm on making YouTube videos as well. Click the like button if you enjoyed it. It helps me out a great deal. Of course, subscribe if you want to see more in the future. For now, thanks for watching. I will see you next time. See ya!